So,
That was gonna be my question, with 10 minutes into community,
so,
we each get 5, or what?
no, that's a great question. And no, that's not the, so we're going to push to 11:30. So, Dr. Harmon, organizational effectiveness.
No rush, Dr.
No, we are keeping the same time frame.
Well, it's
And
because I think this one forms some of our conversation.
Yeah.
Trust me,
Yes,
absolutely. So best laid plans, we do know that, and obviously with questions that do come up, not at all.
30 minutes is ambitious.
It
is.
Yeah.
Let me show you how it's done.
So, there we go.
If I could have gotten my staff anything, I probably would have gotten them t-shirts that said, "We are goal 3." And then allow them to define what that means. Because unlike the other goals that seem to be very simply aligned, for the most part, with something that is tangible and explicit and intuitive, goal 3 really isn't. So the idea of goal 3 is, but the people who live inside of goal 3 and do that work aren't. So when I started this, I had to help my staff understand who we are and who we aren't. So who we aren't is the island of misfit toys. We are not the leftover components of KSD that didn't belong in any of the other explicitly aligned goals. We are not the star of the show. We are not the forward-facing piece of the organization. And that was a shift for some of the groups that I lead, because they were accustomed to being the forward-facing star of KSD. So then let's talk about who we are. So who are we? We are supporting cast members to a production that is critically important to the life of every student. And as such, when we are best and highest functioning, we are unseen and unheard. That means that the district does not have operational problems. That means that we are providing the accountability support that is necessary. That means that the work that we do functions in the background so that the rest of the goals are able to do what they need to do. That students and teachers and stakeholders have the tools that they need to be able to do their work and succeed. That the board has the ability to have data and information to lead, to leverage, and advocate in the ways that are appropriate. That's goal 3. It's who we are. So you want to know more about specifically the functions within goal 3? It's finance and budget. Believe it or not, as much time as we spend talking about our fiscal situation, that is not the focus of what we do. It is simply the conduit to provide the resources for what we do. Nutrition services. As important as teaching and learning is, it goes nowhere if tummies are hungry, because that's where the focus is every day. And for some of our children, the 2 meals they get in our schools are not just the 2 best meals they get, sometimes they're the only 2 meals that they get a day. Print services. It seems odd that technology and print services would live in the same community, but there's a function there to control costs for district when it comes to printing things, when it comes to the communications of things, and when it comes to our early learning. Data services. So it's interesting to hear you all talk today, and we'll get more about this, but data services as a function has lived in the infrastructure of our Skyward system and what that looks like. But it's partnering with the other pieces and not just the inputs of Skyward, but the other pieces of it. And we'll get more to the technology side that complements that. There's assessment. We talked about assessment in different ways. But the function of assessment here is building in and understanding an assessment culture that aligns with academics, but also aligns with how the district is doing. Helping our teachers understand that formative assessment isn't formal. It's not about a vendor. It's not about our ready or early or emails. It's about feedback on instruction, daily feedback on instruction. If we think about assessment appropriately, homework is formative assessment. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Activities we do throughout the day in our classrooms, formative assessment. We have to reshape what that means and then think about how we use that information to inform instruction. PD, communication feelings, how we advocate for public education. There's the research function, which has lots of different meanings. There's trajectory work, like Dr. Watts mentioned. There's blueprint metrics. All of those things go into a function of using the data that is available in the district, as well as building a culture, an explicit culture around data literacy, not an implied culture. So helping our adults build capacity and understanding what that means. Oh, by the way, what you're reading was the task that my group was given of writing their own elevator speech about what they do and how it connects to Goal 3. So these aren't my words, these are theirs, about who they are and how they contribute. Technology operations. None of it works if the right people don't have the right access. So we've talked a lot about transparency, and there's a balance between that. So as an accountability officer, there's FERPA, and FERPA protects student data, but there's a balance between who needs to know what to do their work and how much of that they need. Without this group, different people have different access or incorrect access, and we violate those laws. Technology services. So this is what the forward-facing traditional support has looked like. So they are the face of IT. When people have called for support, these are the people that show up. But we're even shifting what this looks like moving forward. Why? Because the more we streamline our organizational effectiveness, operational procedures, the more we free up space and time to do other work for the district. So support will continue to exist, but it will look and feel different too, because we've got limited resources to do it and too much to do to have someone show up every single time you have an issue. So we're trying to solve those issues systematically and systemically to open up space to do other work. Strategy and performance. So at some point we have to have time to sit down and think about big district problems. Core 24. We were fortunate enough to receive a waiver, but we have 2 years to consider what that plan looks like. Now, that's what that plan looks like to fully implement it for the class of 2021. We still need to practice that plan and start thinking about that development for the classes of 19 and 20. And so all of that means that some of those things, and there has to be space for that, to build those groups together, to think innovatively about that, to build partnerships and do that work. And then digital learning. So again, we've had this forward-facing, district-wide belief about what digital learning is. It's not about providing devices. It's not about students having a laptop to put in their book bag to take home, or schools to have carts to roll out into classrooms, or teachers to have smart boards or Promethean boards. It is about how those technology hardware services align with our instructional program and plan. All of it is useless if it's not tied to goal 1. And so we're rethinking what that looks like. And so what does this mean for KSD staff? Better access to information, streamlined processes and operation, embedded technology for learning, support prioritized by system need. And that's new. Because previously, I think for a lot of the groups that I led, they prioritized based on what was easiest to do versus maybe hardest to do, what was aligned with other goals that they had in mind of what needed to be done for the district, not district need. A commitment to support accessibility while remaining invisible. So remember our goal, best unseen and unheard. We are your behind-the-scenes support. And most importantly, alignment efforts to support the other 3 goals. So it's interesting sitting here with my colleagues. And it was refreshing because it reminds me that we are the most interdependent but independent functions in the district. We cannot work without each other. Every single thing that you all have talked about today is a data problem. And quite honestly, we've not had an infrastructure in this district that has allowed us to solve those problems. So we have a survey for parents who come in, families who come in as immigrants or refugees. And we ask about home language, which is important data to have. But if we do not differentiate the difference between the language spoken at home and the comfortable language of the student, we make incorrect decisions about services. We make incorrect decisions about communication with families. When we talk about MTSSB supports, and we talk about our Swiss system, which is great, if it lives outside of our other data systems, then it makes it difficult to connect data about communication with families, academic results, and behavioral data. Or every time we do it, it's done in snapshot time versus real time. So the work of organizational effectiveness is about connecting those systems. The IT work moving forward is about building that infrastructure, we don't currently have an infrastructure that allows us to answer the data questions that you all have. Because we have to answer them once, and then be fortunate enough to pull that same data set a different time by possibly a different group of people, and hope to get the same results. Moving forward, that's not the case and that's not the focus. We need a unified data system so that we can consistently offer information to our stakeholders, all stakeholders. So what does that mean for our stakeholders? Access to data. And you would not believe that a district that has been successful in rallying their stakeholders around one-to-one wouldn't have an infrastructure system in place that allows those stakeholders access to that information. And so, fortunately, we've made some investments, we've made some shifts in organizational effectiveness moving forward and IT. And we can offer, and we hope to offer in 1819, things that look more like this. This is an example. This is not necessarily our goal, but there are districts throughout the state that offer stakeholders, external stakeholders, access to district information at their level of readiness and to their level of desired detail. They also offer a level of accessibility and transparency where you can download the underlying data that is a part of it. Whether you want to know things about demographics, or you want to know things like this about strategic plan. The different districts' goals, but they're out there for the world to see whenever they choose to look at it. Or, given where we are right now, you want to know more about the district budget. If other districts have been able to do it and they haven't made the same technology investments, why not can't?
Are these all connected, the software? In other words, like what you showed, timeline academics and finances, are they all in one system or they're just?
So typically, what underlies these metrics, or well, the ability to visualize these, is a data warehouse. And that data warehouse tends to be a unified system. It takes lots of different shapes. But typically, it all moves data into one system. What the annual uploads or overwrites are every evening, how to pull from separate systems and integrate it into one, differs depending on district resources, district philosophies, whether or not they are a Microsoft district or a so-and-so district, or they choose to. All of that technology stuff underlying are kind of the details of the weeds of it. But there usually is a synchronized single system where all of it lives together. Now, someone said here we have something like that. We do. The difficulty is that when you go to pull things out of it, you get probably two things that are my worst fear. In the best case scenario, you result in an Excel file, which for someone like me, it's okay. I don't mind writing the code. I have the software and skills that allow me to turn that into a graphic for someone, or for myself if I want the information. That's not useful for a building administrator. That's not useful for the board when they ask things. Nor do we have the staff to do that every single time somebody has a new question. That's the best case scenario, you get an Excel file. Worst case scenario, you get a PDF report from Skyward. And that's even less useful. When an administrator asks a question, they don't want the underlying data. At that point, they want the answer to the question. And then at some point, they may want to come back to the underlying data and be able to see that. So we've got to be able to create systems that offer both. Higher level, and then depending upon your need, your responsibilities, and then the work that you have to do, your level of access to dig deeper and dig deeper and dig deeper will be provided.
So I know we at least talked about this past year Tableau and how that was going to be used. Is that part of what you're looking at to start going forward, or?
We are. So, and not because it is necessarily the industry standard or there's a particular onus to Tableau. The district actually made a significant investment in Tableau about 5 years ago, 6 years ago at this point. Actually, no, I apologize, almost 7 years ago. And to make the best use of the significant investment that the district made, that will likely be the tool that we use moving forward. Because we made the resource investment, why do something new? Let's bring on people who have the skill set to either learn it quickly or have the skill set exhibited in previous work to be able to immediately apply that at Kent. So that's what we're doing moving forward. So that will likely be the tool we will use for both of those reasons. In fact, our principals just yesterday got clear directions, step-by-step directions about how to access some internal dashboards so that they would have information about the state of their 18-19 school. Demographics, disciplines, academics, some other pieces. But they were walked through that yesterday. So we're starting to do that, and we're also starting to think about how some of that can live external.
Can you flesh that out just a bit to gain a little more clarity on the investment as in Tableau server?
So we made an investment in Tableau server. Tableau server is the gold standard of Tableau. What it does is it allows, so Tableau typically lives, or data visualization typically lives in one of two forms. Either it is desktop, user license given, so each individual has to do that, and that's particularly costly and usually limits what can be done. So you usually have 5 or 6 desktop licenses, and then they push out data visualizations, which are nice, but for the most part, they're not very different than like an Excel graphic or something like that. It's not manipulable in that way. It doesn't refresh. When you use Tableau Server, it allows you to connect directly to that data warehouse and data system. And so that as that data updates as part of that overnight upload process, the data refreshes if it is updated overnight. So there are some things like annual state assessments that aren't really going to update overnight. I mean, they will update overnight, but there's not going to put new data in. They would take the assessment once a year. Discipline data, attendance data, those kinds of things, some of the grade data would change overnight and could be reflected in new dashboards daily if we use and leverage Tableau Server and it's connected to the proper infrastructure. And so that's where we're going.
We use it at work all the time as a credit card.
So I'm just totally curious, you said we invested in it 7 years ago? And is it just now being used to Fidelity, or are we just now beginning that? And I'm just wondering about what the delay was.
So, I'm not really clear on why the district made the investment that it did when it did. But I will say that we weren't really using it with Fidelity. We were still using server as if it were more like a desktop piece. So we had a few people with a few licenses and we were pushing it out. It's actually been mostly used for internal pieces, some internal work. And actually you as a board have seen efforts of Tableau, but not in the most appropriate and optimized way. So the discipline data that you all look at every month in board reports is actually a Tableau visualization. But what do? We turn it into the worst thing possible. We turn it into a PDF and then present it to you as stagnant data. And so what we're talking about doing moving forward is moving that into more of an alive and manipulable environment. Because remember, our goal is access for stakeholders at their readiness level and at their level of appropriate access. So there are some things that publicly we cannot let people drill down to the student level to, or even sometimes student group, depending on the size of the student group and what we're doing. There are other pieces internally where that's absolutely necessary. You need to be able to see not just the group of students, you need to be able to see the student. And that's the important piece of that. And as a board, you may not necessarily need student level data, but you do need to look at student group data. And it would be nice for you to have that level of access, not just in a PDF, but to be able to develop questions to be asked to staff, or to possibly get your own answers about what's happening. So. No, we've not, but we are moving into the high fidelity. So no, so the answer is no, so nowhere near, but that is what we're moving to. And that's actually how we staffed some pieces of organizational effectiveness, looking for that, knowing that we needed to build an infrastructure that looked like this. Part of the redesign of organizational effectiveness in IT was about this work. Knowing that some operational things need to happen to keep the district running. So we have to have internet, we have to have a network system with drives and cloud technology and all those things, but we also need to be able to answer questions. So how do we build those systems? And then how do we have people who are able to do that, visualize it? And oh, by the way, it's not just visualization. So this is not just about the work of pretty pictures. It's actually about the work of connecting different data points to answer questions. So it is about how is breakfast participation and our breakfast after the bell metrics, which will be required in law in 1920, influenced by our bus and transportation routes and whether or not students come to school on time. That could be correlated data. That data combined could give us information about not just how we're doing with breakfast after the bell, but how many students actually need it versus, oh, if we made a shift in something that we control, we could change what Breakfast After the Bell looks like for our schools and for our district. So it's not just pretty pictures. It is about combining data sets and information from multiple sources that have existed. So it's not like Justin hasn't been monitoring transportation routes, and it's not like nutrition services isn't following participation numbers. It's thinking about all of those connectivities that help us understand how we work together. Like I said, interdependent and independent goals.
Talking about digital learning, and this goes into PD, so you're at PDs again. What efforts will be made to help teachers utilize the technology more innovatively, more?
So I'm not necessarily sure it's about the innovation of how we're teaching teachers how to do it, or the innovation of even the hardware that they're given. It's about embedding it in a professional development that they're being provided. So I think what we've done before is trained on technology, meaning here's the thing, and let's show you how to work the thing, and we'll show you what to do with it and how it connects. And what we're talking about moving forward is, okay, Danelle, Mariah, you all are planning and funding PD. In the lessons that you all are planning and the things that you all are doing in classrooms, let us provide you the resources, the supports, and the hardware, train you on how to use the hardware so that you can model and so that it can be modeled how technology plays a role in whatever lessons in PD you're providing. So again, the technology isn't the star, it's simply a tool being used as it goes forward. So in that, you're going to learn how to use the technology and use the hardware while you're really learning about instructional practice, because the focus is on instructional practice, not on the hardware. And I think that's what we've done before, and so that's going to be the shift. And the IT individuals that are leading that and participating in that are excited about that shift. They're also excited about, as we think about our deployment of one-to-one and going back and looking at that, and thinking about how that aligns with our instructional plan. So yes, we've made commitments to equitably provide resources to every building. But let's think about what that means. Does that mean that, okay, it's time for elementary schools to start getting their laptops? Do we give 250 to every elementary school? Or do we give enough to ensure that an entire grade level at every elementary school has the resource so that when teachers get their PD, they know that district-wide, every teacher at that grade level has the tool, their students have the tool that can be used to do that work. Whereas if we give a set number to every building, sometimes it's a whole grade level, sometimes it's a grade level and a half. So rethinking all of those things, because we are connected, and it impacts how we support teachers and how we support our district. Ross, I think you had a question, but I can't.
Yes. No, well, per se. Because we're talking about, in the beginning, we're talking about something like trying to solve the unsolvable problem, which is getting this unified data source. It's not done yet, and it's not clear, at least to me, that we know why we failed in the past, and therefore we know what to overcome to get there.
So I think the biggest failure in the past was that it just wasn't a need in that way. So I don't think we were thinking about answering connected questions that way. I think the real answer is we were providing answers to questions out of compliance. So a lot of the information that we've been providing to staff, to the district, is because OSPI said, or because there's an RCW that says, because WAC says, because we have to turn in this report at this time. Or we're reactive because someone wants to know. And so what I've encouraged staff to think about too are, as you answer a question that you think right now is a one-off, it's never a one-off. Because if you do it well and it's useful information, next year this time or next month, depending on what the data is, guess what they're going to come back and ask you to do? Can you run that report for me that you did such and such and such ago, or can you provide? And so I think that it's the shift in the mindset more than it was about not having the capacity to do it or even the funding to do it. It was just, we've always operated under compliance. So because of that, title data lived with student and family support services, HR data lived with HR, assessment data lived with assessment, and sometimes assessment lived in curriculum instruction, sometimes it lived outside of it. Communications data and the things that they took about the top 10 languages, oh, okay, well, we'll talk to so-and-so about that. Transportation data lived with transportation. Nutrition services data lived with nutrition services. Oh, and by the way, free and reduced lunch data lived with nutrition services. Why? Because they're the source of that, because the obligations come from there. But all of those things are connected. So, because every group was answering questions out of compliance and doing their jobs, we weren't thinking about a connectivity in that work. And I think that's the shift in this. And so, it's about now, okay, IT people, you have the capacity to do this. You have the skills to do this. Now you have the right why of moving forward. What can this look like? What should this look like? Let's move forward and get it that done.
And so that's where, do we think we did a big reorganization, and we think we've aligned the right resources to get that going forward?
Yes, and that's why I said we aren't the island of misfit toys. There's purpose in how we were put together and why. And so I had to help the groups understand that too, because for IT, their previous why, a lot of that was infrastructure and operational, so networking and all of that. And then the other was one-to-one. Those were the two areas of focus. And it's like, yeah, those are important things. Supporting cast member important things. So, and infrastructure for the district looks like this moving forward. And how we support with one-to-one looks like this moving forward. We're not walking away from those things, we're just reconceptualizing what they need. And helping people understand that, yeah, supporting cast member means we support them this way. And we want wins that are important to our stakeholders. The infrastructure stuff will happen. So we don't need to tell people that we're doing that. They'll know it when they click Google Chrome or Microsoft Edge and the internet comes up. Or when they try to go into the cloud or they go into our drives and they have that connectivity. They have that access. They'll know those things are happening. We don't need to tell people they're happening. It's the other pieces that we need to start doing. It's the other pieces that they need access to.
So how are you communicating, because that's a big change, right, for our district, and especially how IT is viewed. So, and as I was quickly reading, the different statements from the groups, how are those being communicated out to our whole school community so they understand those things as well?
So during our leadership days, we rolled this out to building-based admin and central admin. So our central admin leaders, our principals, APs, principal interns have seen this. And we started to have some conversations about what this means and what this looks like for them. And we even had a little bit of conversation for them on the previous slide about the more tangible things. So one of the big things for schools, but probably small things for you, is about now having a director of assessment who also serves from an OSPI function as a district assessment coordinator. It's called a DAC. That is not something that is meaningful to you, but it will be meaningful in the world of school-based leadership, because having a designated DAC whose focus is assessment and is not executive cabinet work or the other things, means that now they have a direct contact for expedited appeals and graduation waivers. They have someone to reach out to OSPI, because OSPI will only talk to the DAC to answer questions. Even when someone emails, they push back and say, your DAC for your district is this person. Please contact them to get the answer to your question, or to reach out and communicate to us. So that gives schools clear designations about who their access point is for this, how you can get answers to this piece. And so we started to talk about tangibly what that means. High school principals jumped immediately on the strategy and performance piece, because they're like, oh, is this where we're going to start working on Core 24? And I'm like, yes, that's the space for that to say that there are multiple people that will need to be involved in that work. It might be led by organizational effectiveness, but it will not be decided by organizational effectiveness. So that's where we're starting to kind of communicate that and say, and then partnering with Melissa. So with the internal directory, they will then be able to see, these are the people that are attached to these things and who you can contact to get the support. We're also moving people away from named IT support. And that was a huge debate with my executive assistant. She was like, well, I want, and I won't say the staff member's name because, and they're important and they provide service. She's like, why is that person's name listed? I said, well, does it matter that that person comes to answer your question or that someone answers your question? What are you beholden to? And so when we started talking about it, it's like, no, it's more important that I get support, not who supports. And so we're trying to shift some of that too. So yes, for some things you need to know who the DAC is. You need to know who this person is. But there are other instances where it's not so important as the who, as long as there's consistent support and there's a plan for that. And so we're communicating that in multiple ways. A lot of the communities, a lot of the principals have already had conversations with Tashawn as executive director, the person leading this kind of combined research and IT piece. They've already had conversations with, of course, they know Tom Metcalf, but under this new look. They've had conversations with our new director of assessment, Lisa. They're having conversations with Ashley, who's the director of research, to already start this work. Not just our principals. Our MLEs are having those conversations with them. Our chiefs have had conversations with them about what are your expectations, what supports can we provide. So we're starting to get that messaging out of support looking and feeling different, and of starting to be proactive and hidden. So
I have a question, and I don't know if it integrates, but it does. Learning to So I saw the budget, the technology integration line item. So how is that different from before versus now? We still have the curriculum center, right, which I think was part of technology integration.
So no, it was always a CNI piece. That was always a teaching and learning piece. Curriculum Center was supported in terms of, we created the site in SharePoint. It was managed partly by CNI, teaching and learning, and partly by IT. But it wasn't, it's not a, so.
So how is technology different? Technology integration different from 2.0?
So it's about the thinking of the plan. So like I said, one-to-one will exist. So the budget's not gonna change. We still have to buy the devices and get the devices. It's how devices are deployed. Meaning, are we thinking about that by grade level versus just equal number to every building? Are we aligning that with appropriate support for our staff to know, now that your students are getting this, teachers, do you know how to guide that? How are we communicating with parents to let them know that your 9-year-old may be coming home with a new device this school year and what that means for you, what that will look like for their homework costs, like thinking about those kinds of things. So it's not so much that the budget will look different or the expenses. It will look a little bit different, but I mean, for the most part, it's going to be the same. It's going to be big. The devices still have to come. It's how we roll them out and how we have conversations with the other groups about what that looks like. So it's really about the day-to-day work and not necessarily about the budgeting, if that's your question.
No, I'm just saying there was a line item in the budget. I thought technology integration went away.
So again,
As it existed before.
and it did. It doesn't mean that's
That's why I'm
good.
asking how is it?
I'm sorry, there's a bird that seems to think that it wants to be a part of this. Yeah, so it keeps, I'm sorry, and it just keeps like, that's why I'm like, what are you? So it did go away as before. The support services and things that need to happen in the district did not go away. And I think that's a big part of organizational effectiveness and explaining all of this KSD 2.0 to our staff, is that just because it went away as you knew, does not mean that the thing will never exist again and the support will never be provided. It is, okay, as we think about what we need to do moving forward as a district, as we think about the outcomes that we have and expectations that we have for our students, how do we need to structure ourselves to be a better support? And what does that need to look like? So technology integration and that piece. It's not about devices. So we need to step back and let that not be the focus. We need to let the focus be instruction, and then we need to be supportive of what that looks like, and then help our hardware be aligned with what the instructional plan is. And so again, it's that shifting. It's not that it went away. Our teachers will continue to get support with technology. They will continue to have access to staff to support them in that. And they have fewer staff, that's true. But remember I said in the beginning, we're restructuring our operational procedures and processes within the district, within organizational effectiveness and within IT, so that we can free up space and time to do more of that work. So we're not one-offing little projects. We're solving the system problem, so we don't have to solve those little one-off projects and things anymore.
So, just one more question. So you mentioned that one situation where somebody's saying they wanted a named person, you're moving away from the named person, which I totally get. But are we also asking those questions about what is it about that person? So is there a certain skill set or something that they have that maybe one of the other people don't have, so we can build up those supports so we can get to that place?
Yes, we are. So we're kind of cross-training, cross-facilitating that work. We're also starting to, so like I started this earlier saying that everything that you all talked about to me is a data problem. So even this is a data problem. So you like this person, why? Or when this person came to help you, what problems were they solving? By the way, were they the person called when they were always solving this type of problem? And how many times are we solving that problem? And you're spending how much time solving that problem? Could we do something different besides just coming out and fixing that for you? Could we make a system shift and fix that for everybody? How are you interacting with staff? It's not because the person wasn't doing a good job and they're not fair. I think that it was more because we know we call, even when we call customer support or even when we send an email, this is the person that has been designated for our area to show up. And so I'm used to seeing this person come when I have a problem. And so instead of now calling customer support or following the process, I now just call this person and send them an email.
And I want to get service, because those relationships, right, and those things happen. Because we call who we know is going to help
Come
us,
in, right.
or who we have a relationship with, or,
Right. But circumventing the process, even though getting to the person quicker helps you solve your problem, now limits us on the data of, are we keeping to have the same problem, and how is this person spending their time? So we don't want you to follow process for process sake. So we've got to, again, reevaluate, look at that data and say, how many times are we solving this problem? Not that you're not good at solving the problem, but could we solve the problem in a more strategic way to free up your time so that when you are called for one-offs, it's a real one-off and not the same problem that just happens to be happening for everybody or 5 or 6 people over the course of a week.
Yes, I agree, but I do think customer service is important in that. And because the reality is, anytime we can call, we all, right? I mean, there's experiences where we know there's certain people that I can call, I'll just say my district, that I know are going to be much friendlier, much more. So I'm just saying that just that's a component that drives a lot of my.
And we're not getting rid of customer service, and we're not getting rid of customer support, and there will be people who show up to do things. So it's not just like, oh, you're going to send in a request, and you're going to get an email back with a step-by-step how to solve your own problem. That's not what I'm saying either. That's not, so we're not getting, again, so when we thought about realignment, and we thought about repurposing staff, because there were less staff, we have to think about what that looks like. So that may mean that for some of these small problems that are big problems to you, because when it happens, you're prevented from doing your work, so it's a big deal. But it's how can we solve those in a way where, okay, we can make a small system shift here. And this will make a difference here, here, and here. So I'll give you an example of one of those that happened. We've been talking about email groups. So we have some shift in the district, and there's new leaders and central admin in our buildings. And we want to have an email group for principals. And we want to have an email group not just for principals, but for elementary principals and middle school principals. Oh, and we want to have a leadership email group, which is all principals, all APs, all interns, and all central admin staff who are on the non-rep admin list. Sounds easy enough. But historically, we've kind of been building that and fixing it name by name. So when I started to talk to IT about this, I said, hey, it hasn't come up as a formal request yet, but this is going to be a thing. So let's start thinking about how we can solve this. I said, who owns the email group? Well, so-and-so owns the email group, but HR owns the data. Why does HR own it? They said they don't own it. Well, they own it because where does employee data come from? It comes from HR. So back to this kind of siloed system thinking. And so we started talking about it. I said, well, you know, if we just use this field in Skyward, it wouldn't just solve our email group problem. It would solve this problem over here that so-and-so was asking about. It would solve this problem. I said, oh, so you mean we could have a system approach to problem solving and end up with a result that solves the immediate need, but also another district need that hasn't been formally expressed, but you realize this problem. Maybe we should start working on that. So it's that kind of thinking that we're moving toward.
And so is there a way to keep good documentation of all of those things in one place, like a knowledge management system? And would that be part of this Tableau, is that it's a repository of all the learning experiences?
So much to the vein of the existence or sentiment of my colleague chiefs, there's an IT project request form and process which allows you to outline kind of all of this, and then IT on the back end talks about the steps that they do to solve the problem. It's too soon, but so what I'm saying, so yes, something like that exists, and we're also yes, there is, and yes, we do. It's not necessarily going to be step by step. We did here's what we did in the code in the system to do this. But it is, it involved these groups, it involved these people to solve this problem. Yes.
So we have new people probably training somewhere.
Well, and so, yeah, I mean, we're fortunate to have, although limited resources, some stable resources in IT who were accustomed to some of that. So for them, it was about culture change and shift, and they've done very, very well. Adapting their thinking and starting to become part of this. Like I said, if I could get anything for them, it would be t-shirts that said, we are goal 3. Because they wrote these statements collectively about their work under this new paradigm, this new thinking. I didn't write those for them. So, we are goal 3.
Thank you, Joel.
Well, that, as we transition, and I think the common thing now, accessing not data or information, data and information to our premier diverse workforce takes us to human resources. And Mariah, the floor is yours. We are going to, as she's setting up for a presentation, we're going to again honor the time that we have just in our schedule moving into executive session at 11:30 approximately. And we have a working lunch. I'd be happy to order pizza. If we have an urge to one or choice of but after this, after we'll dismiss staff.
So since we're going to end it at 11:30, I really will show you how it's going to be done, because I'm going to get down to that 30 minutes. But I'm going to do a dual break. I love my colleagues, by the way, and I love coming to work every day.
It changed depending on.
Oh, exactly. You guys are you're a contributing factor to my success.
What's within your control?
But do what I can. And because HR, I love when people say HR, because HR actually stands for two words, right? Human resources. And the key word there being human. And so I think it's really important to bring us back to human resources is really at the heart of our organization, which is our workforce. We absolutely here to serve our students, and we cannot do that without a high quality workforce. So I'm actually going to do a dual purpose activity next. It's going to take 5 minutes. First purpose is giving you a minute to stretch, because you've been sitting here for a long time, and because I care about humans, I know they need that. They need that opportunity. And the second is to meet the practice of putting our practice out in the open. So we're actually going to go on a field trip, and our community members are absolutely welcome to join us. So we're going to take 5 minutes, and we're going to stroll through HR, because there's some great people doing HR work right now. And in fact, you'd like to see them. So come on in.